So, welcome to the latest episode of Who Gives a Folk, a channel that lies somewhere between folk horror and the everyday world of normality. Today, I want to go back to the 70s, 1975 to be precise, and an episode of a thriller anthology called Won't Write Home Mum, I'm Dead. Now, this has got a bit of a bad rep over the years, but I think it doesn't deserve it. It has, on the face of it, all the trappings of a classic folk horror movie or folk horror program, with rural isolation, cultish goings on, the hint of the supernatural, and the outsider coming to visit. But it's never really been referenced as folk horror, and in fact, it doesn't really get much of a look in at all. And I think that's a shame. I think there's quite a bit in this program that merits further investigation, further consideration. So released in 1975, and it is of its era. So the story opens, and you might want to skip the first episode, the first scene, because it gives, I think, rather a bit too much away. And it kind of spoils some of the atmosphere and some of the underlying themes through the rest of the program. So heaven knows why they did it. They just probably wanted a dramatic opening and killed some of the drama of the actual program. But anyway, the vibe is Abby, an American, comes to a rural part of England. She's worried about her fiancé, Doug. She hasn't heard from him in a couple of months, and the last she knew was that he was planning to visit their old friend and her half-cousin, Alan, at a commune in this village. So she goes to a commune. She hasn't seen her half-cousin, Alan, for about 15 years, and at first, they're not quite sure of each other, but they seem happy to see each other. It's quite a warm response. But it's also very clear that Alan thinks she probably should stay somewhere else. Commune living wouldn't really be for her, and she stays. It all seems, workable, but there are undercurrents of unease which play out even at this early stage. The commune itself is quite culty, and there's this a big thing that runs through the whole episode about carved heads. The main female lead in the commune is making these heads. It seems to be part of a project with Alan, and the heads are quite Jesus-like, quite church-like. They're not sort of comedy little heads. There's a lot of reverence paid to them. They're made by her in the kilns, and she's really pleased that she's perfected a colour red, which is used to stain what looks like the eye bleeding on one of these heads. The other main character, apart from the rest of the commune, is a guy called Frank, who is a bit of an ex-bruiser, but since he's come to the commune and start taking up wood carving, he's found that he can put that past behind him. He scares Abby on a number of occasions and suggests that he's carving her as Joan of Arc. Now, while she's staying at the commune, Abby has visions. She says that she's had a telepathic link with her fiancé Doug ever since they first met, and it's grown stronger over the years. And she starts getting these images of him burning. She gets images of a red Rolls Royce, and she starts to hear what sounds like him, but it also sounds quite a bit like Alan, calling her, saying her name, and at different points in the episode, what looks like it could be supernatural happenings, like a paper blowing or photo blowing, so she has to follow it. Seems like it could be her fiancé leading her somewhere, leading her to try and discover something. Now, another big folk horror trope, which I think also is reflected in folk drama, is the presence of the landscape, the countryside, the rural nature. And here it's very strongly reflected in an obsession with a group of elms. When she's being given a lift by Frank, Abby asks if he can stop, because she senses something by these elms. And she says, I thought there were 6 of them, and there's only 5. And Frank says, yeah, one of them had to be cut down because it was dangerous. And then a couple of times during the episode, Abby runs off, and she's found hanging around this area by the elms. There's something about that place that is calling to her, but really, strikes a chord with her. So you've got the supernatural thread. You've got this calling of the calling of the elms, the lake in her visions. They're all echoes from the landscape that are calling out to her and sending her a message. Now, Abby herself is, of course, that classic folk horror trope, the outsider, but here she's a double outsider. The commune are, in their own way, outsiders to the village, but she's an outsider to the village and to the commune. To the village, she's another one of these pesky people who are asking strange questions, but to the commune, she is somebody who's asking about things they don't want to talk about, that they don't really have any comprehension of, causing friction. So it's quite a complex story, and I like the way that as you're watching it, you're trying to unpick what's happening. You're trying to think, that person's doing that for a reason, this person's sending out these messages. You're trying to pick it all together, and probably you're usually wrong. It is really cleverly done like that. The downside is there are some really intriguing aspects that are never fully explained. And just like real life, you don't get all the answers tied up in a nice, neat bun. When you're watching a film or TV program, you kind of like those loose ends tied up. So whilst it's truer to real life, it is a little frustrating in that sense. I won't give too much away because there's only so many spoilers one wants to give in an episode, but there's a lot more that could be said. There's a lot more discussion that could be had about some of these elements of this program. Why is there 5 elms, not 6? Why is that so important? That is kind of answered, but a lot of the other things are left for the viewer to try and ponder. And I quite like that uncertainty that you get. So, to conclude, that's why I think this episode of the TV program Thriller is worth another consideration. It has all the trappings of a folk horror. It has all those elements that you'd look for that would make it a classic piece of TV folk horror, and yet it isn't quite there. It's in a slightly different place, and that place is folk drama. This is where the rituals may not be rituals, the sacrifice may not be sacrifice, but things still happen anyway. I think it's a really, really nicely told story. The different threads are woven together well, not all of them are tied up, and there are a couple of plot holes which I won't mention, but which niggle away at you afterwards, especially after a second viewing when you're thinking, no, I didn't miss something that isn't quite explained. But you have the elm trees, you have the landscape, you have the rural community, you have the supernatural, you have the underlying tensions, you have a mystery. What more can you want from a good 70s thriller? If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe. Hopefully I'll be seeing you again on another video. Until then, take care and let your ghosts wander with you from the 70s.